Alec Pierce and Ray Davis are sneaky good fantasy plays in Week 18. We discuss the best sleepers and DFS plays on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. We're here for you every day of the week, helping you win your fantasy football leagues. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer, but I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. All right, Vinny, I think this will be our last typical Friday in-season show. We're at the last week here. We're still going to give you sleepers of the week in case you're still playing in Week 18 or you're playing DFS and you want, to see who you could be spending cheap on in your lineups there. And then, of course, we'll get into some real DFS talk with PrizePicks Picks of the Week and our FanDuel lineup. So let's start. I want to go off script here a little bit. I don't want to start with quarterback. I want to start with running back because we have some interesting running backs playing this week with a lot of starters sitting. I think the most interesting guy and the guy I'm most excited to watch has to be Ray Davis from the Bills. With you would expect James Cook, if he does play, it would be like the first drive, right? And then we can see what Ray Davis can do. In the 2 games, we got to see him have more than 10 carries. He was actually really productive. He looks like a good back, right? So I'm excited to see what he can do in a nice matchup against Patriots.
Yeah, I think what you're going to see a lot of the Bills is just kind of checked out. It's nothing too fancy here. They don't really have to worry about seeing the Patriots later, so they're not going to have to disguise too much. And Mitchell Trubisky's out there, so he's going to be careful. I don't think he's going to be taking a lot of downfield shots against the Patriots. There's just no need to do that. So you'll probably see a lot of the running game, and Davis has been very productive. He's good at catching the ball as well. So I think it'll be a good tune-up for him because they might need him in the playoffs to have a bigger role than he's had consistently in the regular season. He seemed to be busy earlier in the season, then it kind of faded. He had a little bit of Ty Johnson work in there. He had a 100-yard receiving game along the way. So I don't know. Maybe they just were careful with him. Maybe they knew they needed him later in the year to do that as they kept winning games, and they kind of won the division a lot easier and a lot faster than the other teams in this league. So they were kind of on cruise control for a while, and they kind of got locked into this number 2 seed pretty quickly. So when I look at that, I think Davis is a player that they're going to put out as much as they can. I don't know about Gerard Mayo's defense. There's a lot of changes that need to be made next year. There's already some talk about Mayo being one and done here with some of the dysfunction they've had defensively. So look, on the other side, it's risky because you have Antonio Gibson forcing Ramondre Stevenson to the bench, but Davis looks like the clear-cut guy is going to get a lot of work here with Trubisky filling in for those first teamers.
Yeah, I really do think like if he's the one that gets all the touches, right? Like I wouldn't know why are they going to save his body, right? He hasn't had much work on him. He hasn't been a big part of their offense anyways, but so he should get a huge load with either Mitch Trubisky or now they signed Mike White. Might even be keeping Mitch Trubisky on the bench for a little bit of time in this game. They're going to be running a ton. And then also when they do pass, these backups are likely going to just kind of check down to these running backs, which we know Ray Davis can definitely catch a ball. We saw that beautiful long catch earlier in the season. So I think he's a great sneaky play this week. Now, my favorite play at wide receiver, especially as a flex spot, it's Alec Pierce against the Jaguars. When Joe Flacco starts, Alec Pierce is really, really good. And Anthony Richardson has officially been ruled out. It will be Flacco in week 18. And Alec Pierce has scored at least 18 fantasy points in PPR in 3 of the 5 games that Flacco started the season, including the last 2 games Flacco started. So it was 18.1 2 starts ago. And then last week, it was 24.2 fantasy points he scored. And Flacco did start in this matchup earlier in the year against the Jaguars in week 5. And he hit Pierce for 134 receiving yards and a touchdown. We know the Jaguars secondary stinks. So I'm all in on Alec Pierce this week.
Yeah, I think what happens is Josh Downs becomes a third option and Pittman and Pierce became all over the field because they're the big dudes, right? And you're seeing the throws up in the air by Joe Flacco. This actually could be I don't think it's even exaggeration. Joe Flacco's last action in the NFL. This could be it. I mean, he came back. He was on the couch. He came back for these backup opportunities where he played quite a bit with the Browns and Colts. But I don't know. They were showing a lot that there's just not a lot left there, right? I mean, he's throwing the ball deep, and his arm has never kind of let him down. That's always been his calling card. So that's what he can do, hang in there with some toughness and throw deep. He's not going to give you much more of an element. And I think that cost them last week where they didn't have Anthony Richardson against the Giants. Well, Jaguars has nothing left here to play for. So just throw it up, take your shots here. It could be the last note you play on. And again, the Jaguars secondary stinks. They've stunk all year. Teams have been lighting them up all year. Joe Flacco is not going to be afraid to do that. Now, would I consider Flacco himself? It could be an absolute turnover machine. I would not be surprised, even if it's the Jaguars on the other side. It gets sloppy, but he can compile through the air. And you look at Pierce and Pittman, they're the big targets. So I really like playing them. I think Pittman can elevate more to wide receiver 2 this week, and I like Pierce as a back-end wide receiver 3 if you need him.
Yeah, I have Pierce as a top 24 guy this week. I think he has a really nice week. Now, Josh Dobbs is going to be our sleeper quarterback of the week. It's, of course, risky, right? It's Josh Dobbs after all, but he played for about 0.5 seconds in that game last week, and he scored a rushing touchdown, like right away. We know he's going to use his legs. He has a good enough arm. He can play the scramble drill. Now, Kittle and Debo are still questionable. If they don't play, maybe it gets a little trickier. But last year with the Vikings and the Cardinals, I mean, a mix of both, we saw him score over 20 fantasy points, actually over 23 fantasy points in 5 games last year. So we saw him have really good performances with a couple like mediocre performances in there. And then, of course, a few bad ones. So that's a risk of playing Josh Dobbs, but it's not like he has a scary matchup against the Cardinals, and the Cardinals are playing for nothing either. Neither of these teams are really playing for anything. Just like he could go play his like fun backyard football, which is what he dominates in.
Yeah, he's a compiler, and he can get it done in this one. I mean, we think of Kyler Murray as a compiler. He hasn't compiled as well this season, but he's gotten good enough weapons. Even if you don't have Kittle out there or Samuel, I mean, Ricky Pearsall could have a bigger role here as we transition into year 2, as they need to evaluate Samuel's future there. And then you look at Juwan Jennings being a steady force there. And they've got some depth in their positions where there's paths to him producing beyond using his legs in this one. And this could be a game where, again, the Cardinals defense has been up and down, and the 49ers are not exactly in position to just plug in the back and run all over them. So they're going to have to put the ball up in the air a little bit. And it's a revenge game. We can't forget about that. The Cardinals kind of put Dobbs on the map last year. I mean, now he's on commercials as a backup QB coming in and fixing things. So if the Cardinals give him a shot last year away from the Steelers and all the things that he's kind of been on a roller coaster with his career, he wouldn't be here and he wouldn't have that opportunity with the 49ers. So I think he knows that he's going to play well for the 49ers. Again, the offensive system is just too good here. And again, controlled environment, the Cardinals defense is not scary indoors at all.
Yep. I expect him. I mean, there's so many quarterbacks not playing this week or playing for nothing, or, and Josh Dobbs is still playing for something. All right. He wants to stay in this league too and stick around as a backup. So our last sleeper, we got to move to tight end, Pat Freiermuth against the Bengals. I mean, I feel like he has been our sleeper a lot this year, but this is too good of a matchup not to take it. He's had a solid game in 4 of the last 5 weeks. It's not like been killing it, but last week he led the Steelers in receptions and receiving yards on Christmas Day in a favorable tight end matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs. And now he gets even a better matchup against the Bengals, who are the worst against fantasy tight ends this year. And Freiermuth, I mean, just in week 13, he had a season high 15.8 fantasy points in half PPR, 18.8 in full PPR against them with the 7 targets, 6 receptions. He scored a touchdown, 68 receiving yards. He's a good play this week.
Yeah, I mean, typically these tight end numbers don't lie. We saw it lie a couple weeks ago with Trey McBride, but sometimes you just have to get the ball to this player, right? I mean, that's the thing, is that's the front end of it. If the quarterback is struggling to pass the ball to that player, then that's going to hurt things. But we know Russell Wilson likes to throw to Pat Freiermuth. That's not going to be an issue. He's going to get the ball to him. The Bengals do struggle covering him. He has a pretty good history in some games against the Bengals when they've needed him, the Steelers, and this is definitely one they'll need him. Now, we'll see how it plays out in that first game that's going to be ending right around this game, the Ravens win, then the division won't be up for grabs anymore, and the Steelers will just be trying to stay out of the Chargers here. So we'll see what motivation that comes with. But Pat Freiermuth is kind of the glue of this offense as well. When things are volatile with George Pickens, they need him to kind of calm things down in the passing game. So I think you'll have a pretty good game here. Again, I expect some pretty good volume from Russell Wilson with Joe Burrow on the other side, just totally red hot, and probably going to have to chuck a ton in this game with a little rushing success in store for the Bengals. And I think that's going to be the same here for the Steelers to try to keep up here on the road.
Man, as a Steelers fan, I really hope this offense comes back to life and don't fall on our face here. And I do have a Steelers player in my PrizePicks picks of the week. So let's transition to that. We'll give you our 6. If you don't play PrizePicks, you should join us. And Vinnie will let you know how to do that right now.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's playoff time, and if you're like me and you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action, that's where PrizePicks comes in. If you love football and want a chance to win real money while watching the games, PrizePicks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With PrizePicks, you simply pick more or less on the player stats. Here on Locked On Fantasy Football, we like more because we're a fantasy show, but you can go less. And we're looking at passing yards, rushing touchdowns, receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, all those good stats that we're looking for week in and week out in regular fantasy. And with PrizePicks, you get a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds. And whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout, want to cash out quickly, PrizePicks has got you covered. And with more than 10 million members and billions in winnings, it's clear that people are loving this platform there. Check it out. We will give you our PrizePicks picks of the week coming up just around the corner here after this break. And here's a special offer for you for Locked On listeners. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's PrizePicks. Run your game again. Download the app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's only at PrizePicks. Run your game.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What do you want your 2025 story to be? Every January brings a new chapter, 365 blank pages waiting for you to fill. If there's a part of your life you want to rewrite or plot twist, you've been craving, why wait? Life isn't about fleeting resolutions. It's about taking control and becoming the author of your own story. Think of therapy as your personal editor, helping you craft the life you deserve. It's not just for crisis situations. Therapy can help you develop healthier coping strategies, improve your relationships, and empower you to be the best version of yourself. I could not agree with any of that more. It has helped me so much with coping with anxiety and stress. And there was not a big trauma event in my life, but it does just help me get through life so much easier. Online therapy does. Whether you're facing a challenge or just looking for personal growth, therapy is a powerful tool to help guide you through your journey, whether it's learning how to set boundaries or tackling stress, I should say. Therapy can help you develop skills for a better tomorrow. Even if you never tried therapy, the benefits are clear. Finding someone to talk to and gaining fresh perspectives can help make the difference in how you navigate life's ups and downs. Write your story with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp. BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, we're going to get into our favorite picks of the week, 3 each. I'll start with my top one. It's going to be Sam Darnold, Vikings against the Lions this week. I'm taking as more than 280.5 passing yards. Now, that's a high projection, 280.5 passing yards. But last week, I like to take Purdy's demon against the Lions. I said to take his 300 passing yards. And I'm going to do the same with Sam Darnold. It's not a demon. It's just a regular because it's already high. But Darnold has had over 330 passing yards in 3 of his last 6 games, had 377 passing yards last week. And this is the last 3 games against the Lions. They let Brock Purdy throw for 377 last week, Caleb Williams to throw for 334 in week 16, and Josh Allen to throw for 363 in week 15. Their defense is destroyed. They have nobody left that's healthy. So I'm smashing that Sam Darnold more than 280.5 passing yards.
Yeah, I had a similar thought with a quarterback and a really good matchup in a game that the team needed to win a division title. And I have another former Panther. Can't believe both these guys were on the Panthers, and both of them could end up with 40 touchdown passes this year. It is Baker Mayfield, 253.5. He got snubbed for the Pro Bowl. I guess there's just too many guys that have 40 touchdown passes in this league where there's just not enough room for a guy like Baker Mayfield, who's had a big season, but his number's a little lower, 253.5 against the Saints. I know they're not going to do much. The Saints' offense stinks, and their defense is also pretty bad. So you could have some rushing success, obviously, and cut into this number quite a bit. But again, I think the Buccaneers will be relentless throwing early to get that lead and then turn it over to Bucky Irving and Rachaad White. So again, last week, Baker Mayfield was on fire, totally came out slinging against the Panthers. He ends up as the NFC Offensive Player of the Week. So Baker's had a big year, and I think he continues that. Again, the Saints at home. Again, no Marshawn Lattimore on the back end. They got to feed Mike Evans quite a bit to get him that streak continuing here with 1,000 yards. So I do like Baker Mayfield, 253.5, a little bit lesser than I thought this week. But yeah, Mayfield has just been coming through, much like Darnold, two of the better, not just reality stories, but two of the better fantasy stories all season long with their consistent production.
And it's been super interesting because Bucky Irving has been having great games on the ground too, but it hasn't hurt Baker, right? And the same way Baker's not hurting Bucky. So I love both Baker and Bucky Irving in this matchup. So the Buccaneers have to win. Saints have nothing to really play for. Love that. Now I'm going with the stack here with Sam Darnold, Jordan Addison to have more than 0.5 rushing plus receiving touchdowns. It's a demon pick. So that means you make more money if you get the touchdown. He can score as a receiver or rusher. Obviously, it's more likely he's going to get the receiving touchdown. But he's had at least 8 targets in each of the last 4 games. He's been highly involved in this Vikings offense. No player has more receiving touchdowns than Jordan Addison since week 11 with 7. And the Lions have allowed 7 receiving touchdowns to wide receivers since week 13, tied for 4th most in the NFL. Just last week, both Ricky Pearsall and Deebo Samuel, 2 guys that don't ever typically catch receiving touchdowns, they both had a receiving touchdown in week 17. So Jordan Addison all the way. Love that it's a demon pick, especially.
Yeah, he's been on fire here with Sam Darnold. There's no doubt about it. And look, when they look to the red zone, it's often him or Jalen Naylor over Justin Jefferson because Justin Jefferson's a better field stretcher, and we know all the attention he gets in the red zone. So open things up for Addison and Naylor in scoring position. So I do love that pick by you. Mark Andrews. Now, Andrews had an interesting season. He kind of was slow, started behind Isaiah Likely. Then last few weeks, we've seen the Ravens offense manifest in the way that we've seen it in the past, where he's a big part of what they do. He's scoring quite a bit. His number is very low against the Browns, and he has a very good history against the Browns. This is Saturday afternoon, the first game of the slate. We are looking at all the games, and we'll get into that with our FanDuel lineups as well. But here, 36.5 receiving yards against Cleveland. That's very low. I know a lot of his success lately has been putting up touchdowns, but look, they have come in a little bit banged up at receiver. You have the Browns who just can't stop or cover anything at this point. He's had a good history there. So they're big favorites, and usually when they're big favorites, it's running in, playing off that, and a lot of throws to Andrews from Lamar Jackson. So I like that 36.5. I think you can do it in about 3 or 4 catches, and we're good to go here against the Browns. So again, I should have given him a little bit more love for a second half, but really, if you had him and he was frustrating early, he really came on strong down the stretch. And this was showing the Andrews of the past once he started getting his usage back up there.
Yeah, it's been nice to see Andrews finally be used. My last prize pick of the week is Jaylen Warren, Steelers running back. More than 65.5 scrimmage yards, so that's rushing yards and receiving yards put together. Warren has averaged 73 scrimmage yards per game since the Steelers' week 9 bye. Like, they have transitioned to Jaylen Warren, especially over the last few weeks, but he's had at least 64 scrimmage yards in 7 of the last 8 games. He has 92 in a season high 112 scrimmage yards over the last 2 games, double-digit carries, and 5 receptions in each of the last 2 games. He's going to be used in this game. It's a great matchup against the Bengals. I think his 65.5 scrimmage yards is way too low, so I'm taking the more.
Yeah, I do like this totally because, again, Warren has been involved, as you mentioned. There could be a bit of a transition there in Pittsburgh. We'll see what they do with Najee Harris. I would expect they might move on here, and they keep Warren as a change of pace, maybe bring in a rookie or something like that to handle some of the more power roles. So there definitely has been a changing of the guard there. And again, the Steelers could easily fall behind in this game, and a lot of underneath passes there for Russell Wilson. They're slight underdogs here on the road in Cincinnati, so that helps. Maybe the game script goes in Warren's favor over Harris. So I do like that, especially because it's so low and it's combining scrimmage. So that's receiving and rushing. So I like that. If it was just one or the other, I wouldn't be so hot on it, but that you're getting combined is a really good deal for that one. Now, I'm going to the same game. And the first matchup, Joe Burrow had exactly 9 rushing yards against the Steelers. But the last 2 weeks, 25 and 19. And what are the kind of themes tying together the last 2 weeks? Desperation. The Bengals knew they needed to keep winning against the Browns, against the Broncos to stay alive in the playoff hunt. And he's going to do whatever it takes to get him there. Now, the number is only 0.5 more than it was with his production in the previous Steelers matchup. That's 9.5 rushing yards for Joe Burrow. Now, I can see Burrow wanting to take over a game completely here again and say, look, I'm going to put this team on my back. I don't really care what happens with the Dolphins or what they're doing or the Broncos. I'm just going to go out and lay the best out on the line. So I think he's going to have a big, big game against the Steelers. That's why we kind of like these Steelers assets as well on the other side with Wilson, especially Freiermuth and Warren. So it all lines up pretty well for me. So I think he has a nice game. I think he gets about 12 to 15 yards rushing here in key moments as he gets flushed out a little bit and needs to run. And I think that's going to help him overall passing. So I'm going, that's my last rushing one of the regular season for quarterback, Joe Burrow, more than 9.5.
All right. I could definitely see that happening. Let's transition into our FanDuel lineup. We're going to go through the Saturday and Sunday slate. We're using all the games. We have all the players available to us. We'll get to that after we take a quick break.
All right, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel and FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get on the regular season action. That's right, we have Saturday and Sunday games, and we'll look at our FanDuel DFS lineups coming up. And FanDuel is also America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. You can bet on so many things, and same things we kind of talked about with PrizePicks and all that good stuff with your touchdown and the points on a particular team. There's so many ways you can approach it. You can parlay, put those things together as well. So many good pieces of action this week. And it's a little bit more interesting with teams resting. So you get some lines that are a little different than you might expect, but that's only a good challenge for you to tackle on FanDuel. So just figure it out, who will score a touchdown, how many points will each team score, so much more there. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 bonus dollars there in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook sponsor and partner of the NFL. All right, Michelle, it is time to reveal our FanDuel DFS lineups. And as Michelle mentioned, we're looking at both Saturday and Sunday, so giving us a little bit more so we don't forget about those teams and players from the AFC North, incorporating everybody here this week. So let's start. Who's your quarterback? And I wonder if it's someone we've already talked about.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've been talking about this duo all week long. Obviously, when I'm making my FanDuel lineup, I have to incorporate them. It's Sam Darnold and Jordan Addison as my quarterback wide receiver stack. If I didn't use them, then what am I doing here, right? Like, I think they're the best stack of the week. I'm going to have them in my lineup, especially because neither one is even close to the most expensive at their position.
Yeah, I like that. I actually went with a guy that I've also talked about, and I'm also going a little onslaught with him, with Baker Mayfield. I have him at a very nice price at 8,400, but I know Mike Evans needs to hit a milestone here against the Saints. He doesn't have to see that annoying pest of his, Marshawn Lattimore, anymore in this matchup, so he can destroy it. So he's a little bit pay up there at 8,900, but Jalen McMillan, despite his just productive ways here, he's only at 6,100. So I said, all right, I'll put him in there as well. He's a cheap guy. I can spend a little bit more money on some other positions here this week. It's kind of interesting because this is a week where you're not paying up for a lot because, again, a lot of these big price guys are resting. So you can get a very good lineup without paying too much this week.
Yeah, I saw you're going with the 3 Buccaneers, guys. Yeah. I like that. Now, I have a few guys from this Sunday night game in my lineup. For one of my other wide receivers, I have Jameson Williams. my tight end. I have Sam Laporta. I guess I'm getting out of the way here. But so I have 4 guys from that matchup. I have Sam Darnold, Jordan Addison, Jameson Williams, and Sam Laporta. But I wanted as many pieces from that match as possible. It's the most important game of the week. They're fighting not just for the division title, but for the number 1 seed in the NFC in that bye and the whole playoffs to go through them. I mean, that's everything. And you got 2 awesome offenses, 1 really bad defense, but the Vikings are leaky too. So I wanted as many pieces as possible.
All right, I like that. I'm also going to a very important game of the week. That's the Jaguars and Colts. Okay, it's not, but there's some good opportunity here for fantasy because the defenses stink. We talked a lot about Alec Pierce, but I also like Michael Pittman quite a bit, and this price was pretty nice here at 6,200. So I could pay up for Mike Evans with Pittman and McMillan there, but I also went on the other side to Brian Thomas Jr., big rookie year, and he has one more chance to light it up. And there's nothing scary about the Colts' pass defense. We saw what another rookie did last week, Malik Neighbors, and it's kind of interesting. Neighbors could put up the numbers to pass Brock Bowers. You could see Thomas pad his stats to really pull ahead with the receiving yards. So all kinds of things that can come into play here with this rookie receptions deal. And I'll round out my tight end is Mark Andrews. I get a piece of the Saturday game. Again, we talked about him in DFS. So I have a couple guys in DFS that I'm playing in both places, PrizePicks and FanDuel. They're Baker Mayfield and Mark Andrews.
So my last wide receiver is Alec Pierce. You brought up going with Michael Pittman. I'm going with Alec Pierce here. He's even cheaper than Michael Pittman at 5,800. I did definitely think about Brian Thomas Jr. I wanted to get him in. I just couldn't do it. I had to go a little bit cheaper with Jameson Williams instead of Brian Thomas Jr. But I think Jameson Williams has a similar ceiling to Thomas. So I think that's okay. So again, my 3 wide receivers are Alec Pierce, Jordan Addison, and Jameson Williams with my tight end, Sam Laporta. Moving to my running backs, I have Bijan Robinson. I paid all the way up for him. He is insanely expensive at 9,200, but he gets the Panthers, and the Falcons still need a win. They have the rookie quarterback back there. They are going to lean on Bijan to get him this win. So I was willing to pay up for that. I went with Ray Davis, who we mentioned earlier, as our sleeper of the week. I expect him to get a ton of touches, and he's looked good when he has had it. And then Jaylen Warren. We talked about him all week too. Those are my 2 running backs and my flex: Bijan, Ray Davis, and Jaylen Warren.
All right, I have Ray Davis too, and a part of it is our sleeper of the week. We got to feature him. If we're backing him up, we got to back him up everywhere. That's what we've done all season long. And I'm going to Blake Corum. We talked about a lot about what he could do. I think he's going to be motivated to run pretty hard here. I think Kyren Williams is still going to be the guy next year. But Blake Corum is going to try to eat up a bigger part of this offense. And again, they want to see what he can do. So it's a good opportunity for all these rookies, right? Davis and Corum, see what they can do, because they might be bigger factors in the playoffs, and you can't discount that. So I have Blake Corum as a pretty nice price. So I paid up a little bit in different spots, but again, I'm just going some good values here and maybe some pivots from what we've normally seen. But I'm excited about this lineup. And then I rounded it out with the Titans D, just because they're playing the Texans. They're probably resting players, and Titans were really cheap, so it allowed me a little bit of flexibility with the lineup. They were only at 3,600 with their price, so I just went with them.
I'm not going to lie. I'm pretty jealous you got Blake Corum. I kind of want to go switch mine now because the Blake Corum pick is so good. I do think he can have a monster game. I mean, he needs to prove right now to he hasn't done anything yet in his rookie season because he hasn't had a chance. So this is his opportunity. I love that you got him in there. My defense is the Packers, a little bit more expensive at 4,600, but I had the money, and they get the Bears. Caleb Williams will hold on to the ball for 5,000 years, letting the Packers sack him probably 10 times, maybe a couple picks in there. Who knows? But I was willing to pay up for that. So that is both of our lineups. We actually didn't have too many similarities this week. Normally we have at least a few players that are the same.
Yeah, a little bit different this week, but I think we've found the games we want to target for sure. I mean, we've talked about it all week. I mean, Lions, Vikings, all the games where something's on the line, something matters for one of the teams or both of the teams is where you want to target in fantasy. And if they're both out of it, like the Colts and Jaguars, they're playing for pride, playing for jobs, all those kind of things are still on the line here, and that's going to come into play. But some of these resting players makes it a little more difficult this week. But I think we found a pretty good spot here with some super subs, including Corum and Davis.
That is it for today's episode. That's it for our shows of the week. just enjoy your week 18. Get some DFS in there. Come on, like fantasy's not over. We got one more full week of football. Enjoy it. Thank you all. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. If you're watching us, hit that subscribe button or like or give us a review or whatever on whatever podcast app you're listening to us on. We will talk to you on Monday. Bye, y'all.